My name is Grant Towers, and this is We're Listening, a flagship project formed as an attempt to shine a light on the problem of gender based violence in South Africa. The premise is simple. I approached three women and asked each of them to prepare a 10-minute piece around their personal experience about being a woman in South Africa, and to relate that experience to three men who, alongside everyone watching, have volunteered to listen to their story and hold space for them. The promise that these men bring to the table is that they have agreed not to interrupt, no matter what is said. So, to the men listening and the people watching, I invite you to do so with an open heart and an open ear, which involves listening not to respond, but listening to understand. Now, it wouldn't be unusual for a person to think that they're one and the same, but they are quite different. Listening to respond means you're not actually listening to a person because your attention is split. Instead of listening to what a person is actually saying, your focus is either on making sure your reply is clever, charming, or funny, or in a more serious context, you're planning what to say next to shut down, intimidate, or otherwise beat your opponent in a battle of wits, which is the very opposite of trying to understand them or their point of view. When listening to understand, however, you're dedicating your full attention to what the person has to say. You're listening without your ego, without guard, and when you listen to understand successfully, you effectively come one step closer to addressing a problem. Or even better, you might get to know a person or an individual as an individual, and not as an example of some kind of stereotype that you carry in your head. So now, before we move on to our first speaker, I would like to take some time to mention the organization that has been supporting me in this initiative, and that is the Mankind Project. The majority of the men who have supported me in conceptualizing and creating We're Listening are part of this organization, which is dedicated to changing men for the better, one man at a time. Their work centers around workshops and support groups that, among other things, help men challenge internalized toxic masculinity, homophobia, sexism, and racism, as well as providing them with tools to overcome trauma and to help them on the path to mature masculinity. If you'd like to find out more about the Mankind Project, you can scan the QR code on the bottom right or look them up at www.mankindproject.co.za. Now, to move on to the reason why we're all here. Our first speaker this afternoon is an accomplished stage actor, a Naledi nominee, and an all-round amazing person. I would like to invite into the studio with me, Noni Mkonto. Hey, Noni. How are you
Hey,
doing?
how you
Thank you so
doing?
much for
I'm well.
joining.
Hi, Grant. I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and you look great. You look
Ah,
ready to
thanks.
take this on, you know?
Woo! As ready as
Now,
I can be.
yeah, Now, before we get into this, though, I just want to check in with you. How are you feeling today, Noni? And in a few words, what do you hope our viewers can take home from this?
I'm a bit nervous, to be quite honest, because this is a very big deal, it's Women's Day as well, so I hope me speaking from my personal experiences and speaking from my heart that I will have spoken for some women. And I do hope that the men also do understand that this is not a platform, or not trying to take this on to bring them down, but only to just sort of understand like the daily experiences we go through. I would also just like to have them know that I just want them to put themselves in the shoes of a woman,
Hmm.
as we speak. And yeah, I just really hope we just take away something where people can just start feeling love again,
Yeah,
and have compassion for each other, and just know that in some way we are all equal,
yeah.
regardless of gender, race, whatever it is. But we're all human, and we're all here to live and be on this earth
Live
and be
and let
happy.
live. Yeah, yeah. Well, now, Noni, before we hand the floor over to you, I'd just like to introduce the men who are
Okay.
listening and holding this space for you today. So,
Okay.
first up, please welcome into the studio Desmond Dube.
Hey, Uncle Des.
Hey, Desmond.
No.
Also, Lesego Molotsi.
Hey, how are
And
you?
then
Pleased to meet you, Mr. Maloti
lastly,
here.
hey,
Hi.
Lesego. And lastly, Joshua Murphy. Hey, Josh.
Hello, how's it, everyone?
Hi.
Good, good.
Hello.
Thank you, men, for joining us today. So before we start, I just want to ask you, men, thumbs up. Are you guys all ready? You ready to hold the space? Awesome. Now that the speaker and the listeners have met, it's time to start our first piece. So, Noni, we're listening.
I am flesh, just like you. I am bones, just like you. I am human, just like you. My heart beats, just like yours. Blood pumps through my veins, just like yours. We both breathe the same air. We both walk the same earth, trying and wanting to get somewhere where happiness will settle us all. I am born just like you. I am birthed by a woman just like you. And one day I will be that woman who will give birth. So how come when you look at me, you don't see that? You don't see my human, you don't see my being. You don't see me as a human being. I have no reason to fear men because I had good examples growing up with the men around me. But I fear men because I hear stories. I've taught myself, I'm one of those people in my life where when I move around or experience things, I normally am not the kind of person who always does actions to be burnt. I kind of look at people and I see their actions and I learn from there. So when I say I have no reason to fear men and I fear men because of what I hear, it is because I hear stories from other women. I hear stories from grandmothers. I hear stories from aunts about men. And yet I sit and I question myself, like I've got good men around me. Um, do these men that are around me do these scary things behind the scenes when we're not looking and in front of us they're perfect? It's something that I would not want, to happen. Um, it's something that I pray doesn't happen. But it's almost like the fear comes from hearing stories. It's like hearing a story about dogs, as Black people, when we hear stories about dogs from our elderlies, it's because we hear about trauma stories, stories that have traumatized them when it comes to dogs. And so then the fear of dogs, if you've never had one, comes from hearing about the dog. So I then hear stories about men and I'm like, is this true? And it's it's it comes from a place where then it is almost evident because of our daily experiences when it comes to men and our interactions with men. Like for example, when I've got many stories when I was using taxis as a young girl, and maybe this is also cultural experiences where other cultures or races won't really connect with it. But as a young Black woman who used to use taxis when she was young, um, you'd walk from home to your destination, to the taxi rank or the bus stop. And on your way there, you get cattle called. As there's nothing wrong with cattle calling. There's nothing wrong with, a whistle here and there or a hello from a distance. But I find there's nothing wrong with, I'm hearing feedback. Oh, sorry, I was hearing myself speaking. And you're walking, doing your day, getting by your daily stuff, and you get a cattle call, and it's okay. It's like, hey, you go hi, and you keep walking. Maybe I don't know, a block away from where you were in the first interaction that you've had, but then sometimes you meet a guy who is then more aggressive or less kinder, or maybe he just does this on the daily. You never really know, but it doesn't feel as safe as the first one, or it doesn't feel as safe as the last time, because now you're getting a call and you're saying hi, and you're not responding in the way that he would want or expect you to respond. And you get to this point where you're waiting for your taxi, and this guy comes up to you now and he's speaking to you and asks you for your number, and it's okay. And now the forceful parts come in, where it's like, can I have your number? And you're like, no. And it's like, but I won't interrupt you, I won't disturb your life. And you're just like, no, but I don't want to give you my number. And it becomes a bit aggressive now, where you're just going, shouldn't I, but I don't want to. And you're lucky enough if you say no and he walks away. You're lucky enough when you say no and he walks away, and he doesn't say anything. But then there are times where when he walks away, he'll look at you and be like, oh, well, anyway, you're ugly. I was just trying to boost your confidence. I was just trying to make you a person. But it's like, what have I done to you? I didn't call you over to me. I didn't ask you to speak to me. You decided on your own to approach me. You decided on your own to come and talk to me. You decided on your own to allow this to happen. And now that I'm not responding in the way that you want me to respond, you're gonna now strip away from my confidence by telling me that I'm ugly. You're gonna now tell me that your presence in mine is making me a person, when I haven't done that. So I don't know if men do sometimes just stop and think that, maybe also just these interactions probably happen like 7 times in one day for a woman, where we become then, I don't know, like numb to these interactions, where it will happen over and over again and you don't respond. And every time you don't respond, you get a very negative feedback, because you have not fed their egos by turning around. Or when they say, hey, Wazala, like, come here, you don't go there, because your journey is that way, not to him. And then they utter words behind your back, and those words hitting you from the back, are kind of like, they painful, but you don't put your head down as you're walking. You just carry on walking, because you don't want to show that you've affected me somehow, to the point where you turn the corner. And that's when you actually just start, you're breathing, and you're just like, why would they do that? I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to look the way that I look. And there's nothing wrong with someone liking the way you look. It's okay. We're all attracted by what we see. We are. But I feel like your interaction, the way you come at me, should not have to be that way, or that aggressive, or that forceful. And I just wonder sometimes if, men do try and just put themselves in women's shoes and understand what we have to go through, because also having to be a young Black woman who's walking the streets, and you pass a group of men, or you're approaching a group of men, do men ever stop to think what goes in through our minds? There are so many thoughts. One, just in that short interaction, that short span of interaction, there's so many thoughts that go through our minds. Like, I hope they don't speak ill to me. I hope none of them pulls me by the hand. I hope none of them try and touch me, smack my bum, all these things. And I hope it's I hope I'm safe. But you can feel it from a distance, because you've got your senses. Your senses work for you. Sometimes you know whether you're going to be fine, and sometimes you don't. And sometimes you tell yourself, I'm going to cross the road. And I speak about being a young Black woman then, because when I was using taxis, that was my interaction with men, because it differed when I was driving. Driving now is like so much better than walking the streets. I feel safer. But then when I was young, and then then also just being asked like, hey, where you going? And you're like, I'm going somewhere, because you're scared to carry on a conversation because you're avoiding phone call, you're avoiding being asked for your phone number, you're avoiding being asked if they can walk further with you, you're avoiding all those things because you're avoiding what comes after with that. It not necessarily saying that it's going to be violent or whatever, but you're just not in that space, but you're forced to be in that space where you're communicating with a stranger that you don't want to because you know where it's going to go. And it gets to a point where you sit down with your girls and you're like, yo, hey, when you walk around and these guys, they say these things, what do you do? What do you do? And for those girls, for some of your friends who maybe have the street smarts or have the experiences more than you do, they'll kind of tell you like, oh no, just go on ahead, ignore it, leave it alone, carry on with your life, like, just leave them alone, they'll get tired. But then you're like, but how are you going to get tired? Because like 7 days, 7 times, and there's 7 days of a week, and every day when I'm going somewhere, it's the same thing, it's the same reaction. It is quite scary when you don't respond in the manner that they want. And then I don't know if it's cultural, I don't know if it's background, like how people grow up, because when you talk to your girls and they tell you to just leave it alone, you're like, okay, fine, I'll leave it alone. But I think it's wrong that we have to speak that way, to be like, why can't we turn around and educate these guys and say, listen, don't do that. But then your girls will be like, no, that's when you're asking for trouble. When you're trying to school them and stop and talk to them and say, listen, don't whistle at me like that. Or, when you come at me, don't pull me by the hand. You don't know me, don't touch me. They say, your friends will say, you are asking for trouble, because then you're opening up a gate for a very sensitive, conversation, because then it's going to be like, yeah, but you think you're better than us, or why don't you want us to do this, or like they don't, because now and I do understand that it comes from a defense point when you do try and have those conversations with guys where you're like, but why do you do that? And they're like, oh, well, like, why won't you like receive me in that way? And it's like, but I don't understand why you have to then be that aggressive. And also, I just think when I say no, and I always have a thought in my mind where I'm like, I've just said no. How many no's will it get to the point where this guy cracks, where he actually does force his hand on a woman? Because the ego is now bruised, he is now irritated. And how many times? And I just always ask myself, like, I've escaped that. I've escaped getting to that point where things become aggressive, where it becomes now a fight between two people. I just also wonder a lot, like, is this fear necessary? Is it necessary to be scared of men in that regard, with just that little bit of interaction? And then as a young Black girl who walks the streets and you're waiting at a street corner and you see a cop car coming, I don't understand. I don't know if you guys understand that we also still are standing there in fear, because these policemen will stop and they'll ask you where you're going, and they'll ask you if you need a ride to wherever you're going, because they're going that way. But it doesn't happen like that. It doesn't happen like how I've just said it. It happens in a point where he stops. He is the law. This man is someone that is supposed to protect us, but he'll stop and say, hey, baby girl, where you going? Already already the way he's opened that, it's kind of like, but why would you call me that? Hey, sweetie, where you going? You're a cop. I'm supposed to feel safe around you, but I don't, because you haven't addressed me in a manner that a cop should address a young woman standing on a street corner waiting for a taxi. I remember when my grandmother would say, like, she would tell me and say, you know, policemen would stop and ask. It was a normal thing to be like, hey, young lady, where are you off to? You're standing here by yourself. And you could say, you could get into the cop van and you could go and you could be dropped off. But these days, it's very scary. It's very, very scary. You hear the stories of innocent girls going to post offices just to go and get a package, and then, she lands up there. She's told to come back, but when she's told to come back, there's already a plan for her. There's already a plan for her because this man is not honest within himself. He's not honest to say, if maybe he did tell her that he liked her, but then she rejected him. But then his rejection turned into anger, and now things are happening, violent acts are happening. So it's like, where does the fear of men stop? Because if you're scared of just a play, like a cop, if cops aren't even told themselves to address us in a manner that makes us comfortable. Hi, what's your name? Noni. Hey, Noni, where are you going? That's already my shoulders down. I'm feeling safe. But when he is saying, hey, sweetie, baby girl, where are you going? Do you need a ride? It's like, no, thank you. I don't need a ride. I don't need a ride to get there. And it also comes to the point where it causes anxiety. It causes so much anxiety. I remember having to get dressed, and I'm like, no, I can't wear this. I'm forgetting that I'm not driving with my mom, or I'm not driving with my dad. I'm actually using public transport to get to a certain place. And I'm like, I can't dress like this, because if I dress like this, I'll have comments at the taxi rank. I'll have comments getting into the taxi by the taxi driver in front of other people, and especially in front of other women. But other women will keep quiet because they're then scared to say something to the taxi driver, because then they know he's at that moment got the power. He's got the power. It's his taxi, it's his car. So if he's saying something about my shorts, maybe the woman, out of being comfortable, will be like, yeah, ish. And these young girls, they like to show off their junk, because it's also coming from a place of being uncomfortable for them. So this is a thing that used to cause so much anxiety for me, where before I left the house, I'd be like, I can't even wear this much makeup. Or, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm going to go out. Do I have to use a taxi? I don't have enough money for an Uber. Oh my goodness. So you get a lot of questions in your head from all these experiences, just being the one walking on the street and trying to get to a place very safely. It's just, it used to cause so much anxiety. So the fact that I have no reason to fear men because I've never been violated by one, but then when you hear stories and then you're actually scared, it's actually very scary. And when men also just repeatedly, almost like, what's the word? When they confirm all the stories, it's saddening. Also because I know that not all men do that, and men suffer because they are then associated by a small pool of men who do these horrible things, and then men are associated and they punished by association by the small pool of men who are so not, they have no compassion or no feeling or no emotion for women. It's like, is it purposefully done? Is it an ego thing? Where does it stem from that kind of behavior is okay to, just, I don't know, like, to just be that insensitive, to be that forceful, to just feel like you can take, or feel like we need to act in a manner that suits you. We need to respond to all the things that you do. So I just want to ask that, you know, men just step into the shoes of women, um, and just try and feel how we feel, you know, the the fears that we go through, the insecurities that come along with the events that we face. Um, just in those small, it shouldn't have to be that way, that when women see men they automatically think, oh my word, it's going to happen again, oh my gosh, this is gonna, oh my goodness, oh, you know, it shouldn't. We should feel safe, but yet we don't feel safe. And the thing is, it's not every man that does that. It's a small pool of men that do these things, that when we see a man walking, regardless whether you know him or not, or you've never had an interaction with him, it just automatically happens these days where you are just really scared of him. And it shouldn't get to that point where we are scared. We shouldn't be scared. We should be able to just walk freely and not think too much, and not be scared, and not be scared to be ourselves, you know, where I also feel it's come to a point where people just don't greet each other anymore. You know, people don't greet each other anymore. But when you do greet, I'm a very friendly person, very friendly, very open, outgoing, and I find that when people greet me, I greet back. But when you greet back, why is it that some men will see that as an open gate to have that conversation, like, hey baby, I like you? And it's like, then what do I do with that? I'm just being polite to you. I'm greeting you because you greeted me. It's not about me opening up and saying, hi, come and hit on me. That's not it. So I guess what I'm also trying to say is, can men have an open conversation with each other? If they see another man doing something, can we not laugh? Stop him and school him, say something, educate him. Um, oops. I think it's about time men also do talk to each other and reprimand each other when they see that happening, instead of allowing it to happen. Just be like, but guy, what did you expect of that? Or then why would you say that? Why would you then try and bring her down after she's rejected your request for a phone number? Why would you try and bring her down when she has said hello to you, but then does not carry on with you because you now wanted to take it somewhere else, because you're not used to people being polite? So if she's polite, then she's easy. And if she's not, then she's ugly. So it's a bit of a touch and go. Um, and I just want to say that maybe, you know, how they say, don't let that inner child die in you, because that's the one that keeps you alive, that keeps you going in life. And I just want to say that maybe some men are are distant from that inner child. And maybe if they ask that little boy if he would act like that towards a woman, would he say yes? Would he say no? What would he say? From a child's mind that's looking at a woman, he'd probably, you know, say something totally different, like maybe just say hello and then carry on. Or, you know, maybe just don't follow her and make her feel uncomfortable. You know, maybe just don't be stalkerish. So I think if you can awaken that little boy in you that used to love life so much, that saw things in you know, light and beauty, and just awaken him, wake him up, and live with him, I think the love will come back. You know, just the love for yourself, because I feel like the way people behave sometimes is a reflection of how they feel inside. So I feel that if people just dig deep inside and start loving themselves again. I know also, like, men don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to show their vulnerabilities. They don't want to show that soft side to them. But I think if it was shown more often, it would be such a beautiful thing. it would be such a beautiful thing if men would just allow themselves to be sensitive, allow themselves to be vulnerable, allow themselves to feel, allow themselves to be in that space where, showing love is not a bad thing, and showing that you can be a gentleman, or you can just be a man who just says hello and show appreciation, and then let it happen, and let it be a moment, and let it be a moment, and let it be a memory, instead of leaving it as a tainted memory.
Yeah.
So
Thanks.
in my closing is that little boy needs to come back, and maybe men should have a conversation with that little boy and ask him, what would he do?
Thanks, Noni. Indeed.
Thank you.
Getting in touch with our inner child is integral, really, to becoming a full-fledged man. I mean, we're not living in the Stone Age anymore. It's time that men kind of stepped up. To those who have survived gender-based violence in any way, please know that there are avenues available to you to help you find the help that you need. So there's the Gender-Based Violence Command Center, 0800 428 428. There's Power, People Opposed to Women Abuse, 011 642 4345. And then there's Out, Servicing the LGBTI Community, 012 430 3272 or 066 190 5812. And then lastly, I would never have thought or had the courage to do something like this without the support of the Mankind Project, a nonprofit organization dedicated to changing men for the better, one man at a time. If you want to make a donation, you can scan the QR code in the bottom right corner of the screen, or you can go to mankindproject.co.za to either make a donation or find out more. If, however, you don't feel it fitting to donate to a men's organization, which is totally understandable, you're also welcome to navigate to the sister organization, www.womenwithin.org, or the South African version, www.wfa.org.za, and make a donation there. Or actually, to any organization you choose to support to change our country and to change our society for the better. Thank you, everybody. Be the change you want to see in the world. I'm Grant Towers, and this was We're Listening.